Hunter x Hunter, a story that has captured the hearts of many across the world. A beautiful world, original tale, and an amazing writer who seems to know exactly how to unpack his plotlines that are crafted in artistic ways to convey a deeper message. Yoshihiro Togashi, but perhaps his most important tool in exploring his selected themes is through his construction of characters whose temperament, demeanor, values, and life experiences have all been carefully selected to play off each other and the plot, resulting in themes like good and evil, humanity, power, vengeance, among many others being explored in new lights that push the audience to think deeper. I've covered many of these themes and characters already on my channel, so if you haven't already, go check those out. But there's another character who slots into my list as deserving of a video, who I'll be covering today. Isaac Netero, Hunter x Hunter's enigmatic elder, the widely respected chairman of the Hunter Association, once known as the strongest nen user in the Hunter x Hunter world, but at the same time an unpredictable eccentric, whose personality and motives are shrouded in mystery, but carry a deeper undertone related to a life well lived in the pursuit of growth and self-understanding in the face of challenges and obstacles. Today I'm going to be diving deep, trying to uncover the essence of this character, including what makes Isaac Netero tick, and what Togashi was going for or exploring with the integration of Netero within his story. So let's get right into it. In storytelling, some characters are exposed to us from the jump. Their motives, personality, worldview, and goals are exposed from the beginning. As a result, we get to see this character being explored through their development and the changes they experience as a result of whatever they face up against within the story. This is usually the main character who enters the world either as a naive child with an excess of optimism, or a conditioned mind whose experience of failure has left them with a pessimistic and self-limiting outlook on life. Both are not totally correct on their assessment of themselves and the world, and their new experiences and encounters help them to align closer to the truth through the experience of hope, then pain on one hand, or pain, then hope on the other hand. Either way, this results in a fulfilling and satisfying story being told, where the audience gets to see each character grow and change with each episode. Both these archetypes exist in the form of Gon and Killua within Hunter x Hunter, who embark on this journey as a part of their newly formed friendship, and I've done multiple videos of both of them individually and together on my channel. And I say all this to introduce and emphasize the importance of characters like Isaac Netero. If Gon and Killua are newly sprouting trees whose purpose is to captivate the audience through their rapid growth and metamorphosis, then Netero is like a strong old oak tree that is admired for its sheer presence that is representative of a life well lived. Both are interesting but appeal to the audience in unique ways. You want to see Gon and Killua achieve their goals, grow and be happy, but you want to understand Netero, find out who he is, and extract the gems of his wisdom in old age. Netero does not develop through the series. Oak trees are pretty stable. We just get more hints, each one clearing the fog and mystery around the character a bit more. We are first introduced to Netero in the Hunter exams when he had to intervene with one of the phases of the exam. He carries a pretty blank expression on his face that is indicative of the fact that he doesn't take himself too seriously. When he addresses one of the examiners, he doesn't come across as condescending or high and mighty. Rather, he solved the problem that arose in a way that was just and reasonable. Instantly, Togashi communicates that this character is not ego-dominant, but rather value-driven. Human beings express who they are through every action, and therefore it's not hard to quickly grasp what type of person someone is if you're paying attention. From the tone, body language and facial expressions, it makes it clear that there's something to this character that makes him eerily secure, to the point that his first impulse is not to punish, but rather to reason, despite him being the chairman. Later on, when they are in the aircraft, he disrupts Gon and Killua's conversation, playing an interesting trick on them where he uses his aura to alert them of his presence in one direction, but then uses his speed to pop out the other direction. Netero then asks the kids what their opinions of the Hunter exam so far are, and this is a very interesting thing to do. Why would the chairman play tricks on two 12-year-olds and then ask them how they are finding things, in the process not commanding an air of respect that someone in his position would usually demand? Even when he's met with Killua's hostile demeanor, who had picked up on the fact that Netero was the one who had played the trick, he is not at all fazed or put off. It becomes clear here that he talks to everyone as if they are on level ground, whether it be his subordinates or a duo of kids. Everyone meets the same Isaac Netero, and here we are introduced to the first virtue this character naturally carries and is a part of him: humility, the complete absence of fear and insecurity of the outside world that results in no desire to dominate others or appear higher than them in any way. Other things clearly are of more interest to Netero. I think the fact that he plays this trick on Gon and Killua also points us to the fact that he's interested in human nature. He wants to give the boys an unusual stimulus, because in their reaction he is able to understand more about who they are and what they are like. With his abundance of life experience, he can use the reaction of an individual when facing adversity, regardless of how small or insignificant it may seem, to ascertain more about the person. In this case, it's easy to pick up that Killua has a lot more real life experience and is as a result less trusting and more cynical, whereas Gon is more simple-minded and naive, more representative of a normal child who hasn't been exposed to the real world per se. But it's clear that again, this interest in others isn't coming from an egoic outlook on the world. Understanding and getting to know Gon and Killua, objectively speaking, isn't going to benefit him in any sort of way, at least not in the present timeline of events. They are obviously extraordinary children, and Netero, with his many years of life under his belt, would have a nose for this talent. But for now, it seems he's interested out of pure and honest curiosity. Understanding others and observing how different people react to adversity often leads one to a better understanding of others and as a result, themselves. We only understand ourselves relative to others. If only one human being existed in the world, the feeling of self wouldn't exist, as there is no other anymore. So one way you could understand yourself is by getting to know more about others. And if I had to guess, I think this is a place that Netero's actions are coming from. He then challenges the boys to a game he constructed, where he is carrying a ball that he asked Gon and Killua to retrieve for the chance to bypass the exam and become hunters instantly. He even introduces a secret handicap for himself within this game, and he mentions something that is quite interesting. When he starts the game, he says this will keep me entertained until morning. This confirms that his actions are coming from a genuine place of curiosity and that it isn't about personal benefit. It also points us to the fact that this is a man who's bored quite easily and seeks out mental stimulation. He's not above playing a game with some kids who are taking the hunter exam. It also becomes clear that he uses this game to further understand Gon and Killua. He analyzes their approaches to the objective of the game to gain insights about who they are as people. Killua starts with a technique where he walks around using rhythmic steps to create after images that make it hard to tell which one is a real Killua. Netero recognizes the technique and understands that it comes from the underworld of assassins and professional killers, and is surprised that such a young child had mastered this technique. This approach was also reflective of Killua's less trusting and more experienced nature, where he recognizes that facing Netero head-on is unlikely to allow him to achieve his objective. Gon, on the other hand, attacks head-on, even hitting his head on the ceiling in the process, revealing that he's honest and simple-minded, and is exactly who he comes across as. All this is to say that it's clear that Netero is fascinated by human nature and will go to great lengths to test himself and others to learn more, ideally in battle because you cannot cover or hide your true nature. When moving towards any goal, you inherently learn more about yourself because you employ your energy towards your problem-solving skills and moving towards a target. As a result, you naturally manifest as the person you really are, as the mind is too occupied with using your strengths and resources in the accomplishment of a task to hide and protect aspects of yourself. In hindsight, you can understand more about yourself, and even others can understand more about you simply by observing. Netero employs this here. Okay, so an unwavering sense of justice, a natural and innocent curiosity that uses any means to fulfill itself, and as a result, a natural and unforced humility that is obvious. This is what we understand of Netero so far, but I think we can expand further on some of these points. As we progress through the Hunter exam, it becomes more and more clear about why this man was chosen to be the chairman of the Hunter Association. He may be slightly odd and out of the box, but is underlined by an unwavering sense of justice and reason that keeps him cold, rational and objective in the face of any circumstances. Despite his willingness to form connections with those around him, he is confident in his ability to set aside his own emotions and follow protocol when necessary. When Gon is knocked out by Hanzo after Hanzo surrenders the win to Gon, Hanzo explains to Netero that it's unlikely Gon will accept his victory. Netero remains unfazed, stating that Gon has passed and that even if he throws a fit of rage and kills Netero, there's nothing that can be done to revoke his license. Rules are rules, and it's clear that once they are set, Netero remains dutiful in honoring them. No exceptions are made. The same is seen again when he refutes Kurapika and Leorio's complaint about Killua's disqualification, following the murder of Bodoro. They make a case arguing that they are suspicious of Illumi having manipulated Killua into these actions, as he had started acting strangely after their fight. Netero again remains stoic in the face of these accusations, refuting them and stating that there is no clear proof that indicated any sort of manipulation. Also, there seemed to be no particular incentive for Killua's actions. Netero understands the difference between feeling something is true, using gut instinct and cold hard facts, and understands that justice is only justice when based on hard evidence, rather than emotional accusations, and it's clear that Togashi has constructed a character who is worthy of his position as chairman. Gon is absolutely correct. You must decide for yourselves if you are worthy of passing. You may complain about the results all you like, but we will not be changing our minds. Sometimes in order to be just, you must accept that the world is inherently unjust. In this case, the Hunter exam, some individuals may have passed who are less worthy than someone who had failed. However, Netero recognizes that this is just the way the cookie crumbles in this world, and that worthy and unworthy are subjective labels. The criteria for passing was set out for everyone from the beginning. Those who met it passed, and those who didn't failed. Netero doesn't make room for any conspiracies that arise from human instinct, as this is a gaping hole that can never be satisfied. As we see in the scene, everyone has a unique opinion on what was unjust within the exam, so if you open the door for one person, it becomes a frenzy of clashing opinions. If we fast forward to his fight with Meruem, this same sense of justice manifests itself again. Meruem was initially refusing to fight and wanted to strike a deal with Netero. He explains his new ideology where he will use his power to create a world that is more equal than the current human world, where he observes people grow rich and fat on one side of the border, whereas on the other side, people are poor and starving. Meruem was clearly in a place of open-mindedness, where he was willing to hear Netero out. But it then becomes clear why Netero was the one tasked with defeating the king. Above his exceptional strength, he demonstrated an incredible amount of wisdom and self-awareness. Each time Meruem offered to sit down and speak, Netero resorted to attacking without saying a word. Over and over again, he didn't capitulate to the humanity the king was displaying. And this is where his wisdom becomes obvious. He doesn't care whether the king has become open-minded and knows that this doesn't change anything. Speaking with him and trying to reason is just a self-defeating rabbit hole that will lead nowhere. The king was a chimera ant. He will never be human. There can never be a reality where keeping him alive will end well for the human race, because his ant side will always be there fighting within him, until one day he capitulates to it at the expense of humanity. He recognizes the internal war that is happening within Meruem, where his human nature is at odds with his ant side, and that the two sides are incompatible. Netero also recognizes what is happening within himself throughout this interaction, and this is where the self-awareness comes in. He recognizes that he must end this quickly before his heart is swayed. He knows that his own human nature has inherent weaknesses that can lead him to making the wrong decision if he's not careful. If he allows himself to surrender to the empathy that is growing within him for the king, he's hurting the entire human race. Netero is aware of the responsibility that sits on his shoulders. He understands that his actions will impact the fate of all of humanity, and his respect for this responsibility is what allows him to make the correct decision consistently, and in my opinion, makes him extremely worthy of his position as chairman. Netero's unwavering sense of justice comes from his knowledge that in order to make the right decision, he must suppress himself. It's often hard to make the objective correct decision for us, because we are only able to see what is right in front of us, especially if we don't bear the responsibility of how our decisions affect others. Often, feelings of empathy that are misplaced may make us believe that we are doing what's right, but in reality, if you scope out, will hurt others in the future. Netero knows his objective, to defeat Meruem at any cost. Any hesitation or capitulation could be fatal. It's funny in this scene how Meruem is trying to manifest his human side as a way to do what's right, whereas Netero is suppressing his human side because of his understanding of its many flaws. Netero is much more advanced than the king in this realm, but this makes sense as in terms of life experience, it's 100-0 in favor of Netero. You will only influence me using words. Damned newborn brat. If it were that simple, I wouldn't have to do this. Netero also wasn't expecting Meruem to be the way he was in their encounter, which points to his experience and self-discipline to quickly get himself in order to deal with the situation. As the fight continues to unfold, we receive more and more insights on Netero. Netero is thankful to Meruem for reminding him of his reason for becoming who he is. He had slowly started to forget this as the years passed, as there were fewer people who were strong enough to truly challenge him. He notices himself having developed the habit of waiting for his opponents to attack or strike first, and he searches through his memory as to when he started doing that. He finds that it was in his dojo. After he had grown strong enough, he would wait for his opponents to attack, defeat them, and then accept their hands as they bowed their heads in defeat. When was it that I stopped hesitating to be gracious, taking the hands of vanquished opponents when they bowed their heads in defeat? That cannot be the ultimate power I sought. It is fighting with all my soul against an opponent with the strength to defeat me. I am very thankful for everything that has made our meeting possible. Netero recognizes that in the absence of challenge, he had partially lost himself and his essence, and therefore expresses his gratitude to Meruem for allowing him to realign with his values. And this is the same gratitude he has for the martial arts. He loves and welcomes anything that is difficult or challenging because it reminds him of who he is and what he wants. It keeps him aligned with his values and forces him to grow and expand, while having a chance to prove himself. Gratitude is a major value that underlines the character of Netero. In a flashback of his past, we are met with a few years that Netero spent retreating to a mountain in the winter to reflect. And this is where he realized how grateful he was to the martial arts for crafting him into the man he was. He decided to display this gratitude by practicing 10,000 punches and prayers daily. He would do this all day from the time he woke up to the time he slept, and he would repeat this for 4 years. And by the end of the 4 years, he could do this entire routine in under an hour, after which he would spend the rest of his time in prayer. Netero clearly demonstrated the love he has for discipline and growth. He understands that the person he became as a result of his training was the true reward, and decides that he will demonstrate his gratitude through a feat that required an inhuman amount of discipline and determination. At one point during his fight with Meruem, when Netero unleashes a bunch of attacks, the narrator comments on what was happening. As his time was compressed to its utmost limits, the king, his consciousness alone, barely following the after images of Netero's movements, found that a single emotion reigned within him: complete and utter admiration for his enemy. It's also interesting that Meruem was able to feel that Netero had gone through something unusual like this during their fight. He questions Netero's need to bring his hands together before launching an attack. He says, such wasted movement could cost one's life in battle, but now works as a weapon that may allow him to defeat me. Trying to guess what drove him to do this is pointless. It would have required choosing a path that defies reason. I would presume that, at one point, he was on the verge of madness. And as we know, this analysis was spot on. Netero's 4 years of isolation did defy all reason, but not to him. To him, it was an encapsulation of the man he had become, a grateful man. When making decisions that take into account the safety of other people, he is able to use reason and make the best decision possible. But for himself, he is adamant on always choosing the hardest path, as this is probably when he feels most alive. His constant desire for challenge and stimulation also manifests in other weird and unique ways throughout the story. He employed Pariston as vice chair of the Hunter Association for no other reason than the fact that he doesn't get along with him, again confirming the fact that he derives satisfaction from discomfort and challenge. Another exchange caught my eye when I was rewatching the scene. Meruem praises Netero for being a human who transcended his limits. Netero is enraged by this and says an insect should not talk down to humans. This goes to show how much Netero values humanity and the sacredness of being human. We rarely witness him get angry, and the fact that this sparked anger points to the fact that he holds being human to a high level. And this is probably because, having gone through quote-unquote enlightenment himself, he understands firsthand the treasure that exists within every human being and will not accept disrespect from an insect. And this is confirmed by what he said in his dying breath to Meruem. Don't underestimate the human race, Meruem. Meruem, king of ants, you understand nothing of humanity's infinite potential for evolution. The narrator also comments that this was the first time the king had felt fear. I see now. Yes, I see. You had me in checkmate from the start. If we go back to the beginning of the ant extermination mission, there's an interesting scene I'd like to comment on. When he's leaving the palace with the king, he looks at Gon and points him in the direction that Peter was located. Gon, who was clearly in the pits of his darkness and desire for vengeance, is set further ablaze by this go-ahead signal. Netero clearly understands the place that Gon is in, and decides to leverage his anger towards the completion of the mission that they had been set. It becomes clear then that this character is by no means trying to be a saint. It's interesting because Togashi has constructed this character to be one who carries so many virtues, but is by no means perfect, and doesn't try to be. The virtues he possesses are simply a result of his understanding of himself and what would yield the best outcome in each scenario. He has no qualms with the chaos that exists in the world and does not try to control anyone or anything. He lets things proceed as nature intended and does not step in the way, with an air of self-righteousness to guide Gon. Netero does not think deeper than the results. He is a true hunter. He has an objective. He completes it by any means necessary, even if it means adding fuel to the fire to unsavory emotions like anger and vengeance for a kid who doesn't know any better. But this may also be a result of the wisdom and experience he possesses. The world has a natural balance that it always returns to. He knows by interfering he can't really change anything, in the same way he avoided trying to negotiate with Meruem because he knew that it was futile. He is humble enough to be in complete surrender to the world around him and realizes that he's not worthy enough to be responsible for changing it and those around him. In terms of his empathy for Gon, it's basically non-existent. He doesn't seem to hurt because of the pain Gon is in, but this again is probably because he realizes that his empathy holds no value in this situation. He doesn't fear pain for himself or others because he knows that in his own path, pain pain was what allowed him to become the man he is, and that it's a necessary and inescapable part of life. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Hunter x Hunter's Isaac Netero, Togashi's representation of the pinnacle of human potential, the embodiment of many years well lived, the enlightened one, if you want to call it that. He's probably one of the most refined characters in terms of philosophies, motivations, and general personality, and hopefully you enjoyed me diving deep to dissect a character whose message is so grandiose and obvious when extracted, but at the same time can be so elusive and pass right under your nose if you're not careful. And in many ways that parallels the way Netero carries himself in the series. I've got many more videos on Hunter x Hunter and other series, as well as a playlist of self-improvement videos based on books I've created on my channel, and if you enjoyed this one, I'm sure you'll enjoy my other content. Thank you for watching to the end. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future content, and as always, take care.